going? Good? So I think we're actually just going to jump right into it. So this panel was put together quickly, but we managed to find three really great experts on the topic. So curious, who here has a startup right now? You're running a startup, you're trying to scale a startup, anybody? A few people. All right, so this is probably something that you'll come across at some point, the concept of whether or not you can bootstrap or should you go for funding, what's it like to actually try to do those things. We're kind of curious about the thought process between the two, because a lot of companies very intentionally bootstrap, and a lot of companies very intentionally fundraise from very early on. So the idea is, how do you choose which way to go? We kind of brought a mixture of people that had both. Actually, all of them have now fundraised, but some of them were very intentionally bootstrapped for a long time before they finally made that choice. So without that, I guess any further ado, I want to let each one introduce themselves. First off, I'm Seth Kravitz. I started something called Technori. That's what most people, I guess, know me for here in Chicago. And with that, I'm going to pass it on.
I'm Desiree, and I'm one of the founders of GiveForward. And GiveForward is a crowdfunding platform that gives friends and family an answer to the question, what can I do to help when a loved one's in need? And to date, we've helped people raise over $165 million.
I am Dan Ushman. I'm one of the founders of SingleHop. We provide managed hosting and cloud infrastructure.
Hey, my name is Raaja. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Bucketfeet. We have a mission to connect people through art. We collaborate with the different artists from around the world on every product we make, and now the community of about 17,000 artists from 100 countries.
All right, so I guess we'll go right into it. So I was asking backstage, like, who here was very intentionally bootstrapped and who was bootstrapping just until they could raise some capital? It was kind of a mixed answer, so kind of, where do you fit into that?
So we were very proudly a social venture in Chicago when we launched in 2008, and no one was funding social ventures, so we heard we were not fundable. So we bootstrapped for the first 2 years until we got into Techstars, and then realized that we were in fact fundable. So then we started to raise some money.
We bootstrapped on purpose for a long time. When we started, we maxed out credit cards and learned to be very thrifty. And that's a mentality that we've kept ever since. I think it's been healthy. Even after we raised money in 2012, we stayed thrifty, right? And that's helped keep us profitable and lean.
We bootstrapped very purposefully early on. We wanted to try to see if there was product market fit, and we didn't want to go all into something that we didn't believe could be successful. We learned very quickly, however, that starting a company where you manufacture a product costs a lot of money. Building a brand costs a lot of money. So then we sort of did a complete 180 and got very purposeful of fundraising, so we could compete and grow at the pace that we wanted.
So I guess in my past as well, I had a company that started back in 2004. We bootstrapped it, we scaled it up. We actually ended up selling it without ever raising any capital. So that made me very biased, but then ever since then, I've kind of changed my mind as well, because I guess the funding environment has changed dramatically. You could say from even 2007 to 2008 till now, it's changed even more dramatically. I'm kind of curious about what it's been like to go out, switching from a bootstrapper to try and find funding. I think you'll see Series C and Series D going on right now, the insane valuations that literally, like, just raise your hand and you'd be like, oh, here's $100 million, thanks. And, like, that's how easy it is to raise funding. But I don't feel like people realize on seed and Series A, it's still incredibly difficult. So I'm curious, like, what was it like to go from bootstrapping to suddenly we're like, hey, we're going to go out and raise some funding? How long did it take? What was the process like?
Yeah, for us, it was tough. I think one of the things we found was that while some of these tech companies, digital companies, that sort of raise their hand, hey, we have an idea, we have no revenue, we have no idea how we'll become profitable, give us $10 million at a really, really big valuation, we're getting it, whereas for a consumer brand, you could be making money with revenues, with a real product, with something people could understand, and they would say, that doesn't really make sense. And I think that's sort of the paradox of fundraising, and also who the investor is, what they're looking for, what's a fit for their particular fund, for their LPs. And so you start realizing that fundraising isn't as easy as, do I like this? There's so many other sort of stipulations involved in terms of understanding if it makes sense. So for us was really getting over this hump of finding the right investor, somebody that fit for consumer, somebody who was looking for a brand like ours, and that understood how technology was enabling us to enter a very old industry, but sort of turn it on its head and do things a little different and innovate.
What was it like going from a bootstrapper to a funded company. It was so it was very deliberate for us. We bootstrapped as long as we could. One of the reasons we did that is so that we could build the value in our business up as much as possible before we sold a chunk of it off. So for us, it was really important to go as far as we could on our own, to build it as big as possible without bringing on any outside money. So that when we did go to market, we had something profitable, because you're selling a product, you're selling a chunk of your business, your investors looking at it, how are they going to make their money back down the road? So, you take it as far as you could. That's what we did when it became difficult to grow, and we started needing, more expertise and to get more sophisticated. That's when we went to market. And then, we finding the right partner was really important. We interviewed a lot of VCs, a lot of private equity firms before we settled on one. And truth be told, we didn't go with the highest valuation, right? We just couldn't see ourselves working with those people, right? They know who they are. So.
Our story was a little bit more of a slog. Like a lot of non-tech founders, we had to raise money in order to hire our tech talent. And so once we were outsourcing for a long time, we could only grow so quickly if you don't have tech talent, and that's your most expensive talent. So we went through an angel round after Techstars. There's kind of this misperception that if you go through an incubator, you just automatically get funding, and that's not how it works. You really have to go out and drum up the angel interest yourself. So we were able to get one angel on board, a couple angels on board, but no one wanted to lead our angel round. So we were worried because who's going to give us a term sheet if we have interested investors, but no one will lead. So we actually went to Techstars documents section. So if you guys are writing, taking notes, go there. And they have a really founder-friendly term sheet for raising angel funding, and we used that and circulated that. And then over time raised Series A, and then some strategic and some venture debt. So it's been like little pieces at a time that we've chipped off.
Just one thing to add to what Dan said that I think is super critical and is lost on a lot of people when they first try to fundraise is finding the right partner and not absolutely going after the highest valuation. It's like a marriage. I've been married 3 years, so I guess I can use that sort of comparison. It really is, though. This is somebody that you're going to have tough times with, good times with, arguments with, and if it's somebody that early on you don't get along with, things are only going to go downhill. So really, really considering that is very, very important, I would say.
Yeah, I was kind of curious about that. I was going to ask as a follow-up question that if you get the check, you feel like, wait, this is the great sense of accomplishment, I landed this amount of money or whatever it was, but I'm curious, what changes after you actually have the funding? Because now, for the first time, especially you come from a bootstrapper, where like, I'm in total control of my own company, and I answer to myself. To now it's like, there's somebody who's emailing you and asking for board meetings, being like, you hit your numbers? Did you hit your numbers? Did you hit your numbers? And like things like that, it changes things a little bit. I'm curious, like, what's it been like versus when it was totally yours as a bootstrapper, and now it's like shared experience with investors?
We were relatively young when we took on money and kind of naive, and so we mistakenly, I think, treated our investors like bosses. We kind of reported to them and told them good news and told them bad news, and it was kind of, we were just naive, I think. I wish we had been a little bit more confident and decided the terms by which we were going to like share information and how we were going to do things. So if I could do it over again, I think I would change that dynamic and come in setting expectations as opposed to waiting for them to come to me.
What she said, and what really changed for us was a sense of accountability. Not so much, because you're accountable to a board, but you can't use your corporate card to buy lunch because you don't own all of the company anymore. You have to step up your level of seriousness. So that definitely happened for us. We started generating a lot more reporting, even if we don't share it at the board level, just because we want to perform well. We don't want to have to get into an argument, for board members if at all possible. So, we became more accountable and started to run our business differently. In some ways we took on more risks, in other ways we were a lot more conservative. But in all times, we felt we had to do a really good job. So I don't know.
Yeah, if it's the wrong partner, I think it can get toxic very quickly. If it's the right partner, it adds so much value. It's not even funny, especially for sort of first-time entrepreneur like myself. where they really challenge you to think about the right things and to want to sort of maybe add steps into your process that you otherwise wouldn't have done if you didn't have sort of somebody to answer to. So again, I think it comes down to the right partner, and the right partners are the ones that don't bug you about stupid things. The wrong partners are the ones that bug you about everything, and it could be the smallest investor or the largest investor, and then you sort of feel like you need to answer them. So again, sort of taking it very seriously early on, what you're actually doing and who you're entering a relationship with is critical.
I think one way around that is that we did in the beginning was we sent monthly newsletters, and so we kind of proactively got in front of the questions that were going to come in, and that way people felt like they were well communicated with. So if something was going great, they knew it was going great. If something wasn't going well, they knew it wasn't going well. We built a lot of trust with our investors from the very beginning to do that.
Curious about timeline. So from the moment you decided, you know what, we're gonna raise some funding, to actually closing the first checks, I think that takes dramatically longer than anyone realizes the first time going in. I've heard of stories like, oh, we'll do it in a few weeks, we'll do it in 6 weeks, we'll do it in like a couple months. Then like 9 months later, they're still trying to negotiate their first check to come to the first door. So like, curious for you guys, how long did it take? Did it take dramatically longer than you thought it would?
I think a good rule of thumb is 6 months from sort of starting the process to closing the process, because what you never sort of bake into it is this idea that you might have multiple offers and you have to review all of those things, and then once you have that term sheet, you then need to go through the sort of legal diligence process of actually getting a deal done. And people just assume when somebody says yes, the money has been wired, and that's not at all the case. There's all this annoying stuff that sort of goes into it and is involved. So I think a good rule of thumb to think about is the day you want to close, work backwards 6 months and start sort of planning and reaching out and running your process. Now, of course, if you're a very hot company, it can take a few weeks. And if maybe you're not, or you're not in an industry with a lot of venture money or angel money or strategic money, it could take a really long time, and that says nothing about your business. That just says there may not be the right investors, it may not be the right time for investors, they may not be in the right fund. So there's all these sort of outside factors that you sort of need to take into consideration, not to mention, if you go to Europe, summer, they just shut down. The holiday season, nobody does anything. So you sort of consider that and bake that into your timeline as well.
It took us about a year. So finding potential investors, realizing they're not going to work out, finding new investors, realizing they're not going to work out, finding the right investors, and then negotiating a term sheet and the due diligence process, legal, a year. Not 6 months is too short for most people, I'd say.
I guess we've been lucky. We've been a lot faster, but I don't know if it's just that we've had. I think one part of it is that you have to have relationships with people before they'll make a term sheet, and so we spend a lot more time relationship building, and that's just part of like feeding the funnel, so that when we are ready to raise money, we actually have people that we've already talked to. So start talking to people way before you ever need to raise, and build those relationships and get them excited about your business.
I think it's one of the things to stress is that I get approached by a lot of founders to help them fundraise, and they're like, well, we're about 2 months out from running out of cash. And it's like, wow, that's like the worst time you could possibly go try to fundraise. When you are about to run out of cash, you've waited way too long. So I guess
Give up all your leverage.
Yeah, you give it all your leverage. Also, it takes dramatically long just to get through legal and all that. You're talking months sometimes. So all of you gave yourselves at least 6 to 9 months or longer, like timeline-wise?
One time we didn't. One time we gave ourselves not enough time.
Yeah, it's a general though, just a piece of advice that if you are running out of cash, you probably already waited too long. You really need to take it into a year if you are going to try to fundraise. So I guess I'm kind of curious where you fall in the spectrum of, you have like a Jason-free boot camp kind of thing, mentality, which is anything can be bootstrapped, everything should be bootstrapped, no excuse for not bootstrapping. That's on one side of the spectrum. To the other side of the spectrum is more like your prototypical value mentality, which is just like raise as much money as humanly possible, just take it all. So I'm curious like where you fall on the spectrum of that and why.
So I think you have to take sort of a step back and ask yourself a question: what are you trying to accomplish? So if you want to build a really, really big company really quickly, you're not trying to be, the king of a company where you own 100% of, but you'd like to create a massive billion-dollar company that you're okay sort of holding a little bit, and maybe it's not going to be the only thing you want to do in life, and you want to exit at some point and you want to go do something else. I think asking yourself that just very simple question, what am I trying to do, helps you dictate what you should do in terms of fundraising. So there's a lot of honor in building a company for 50 years, building it into a global company, and owning all of it. And that's awesome. And you're going to make way more money than if you take a ton of money early on and then build something over time. But the other side of that, so where we landed on that was we learned early on, like I said, it takes an incredible amount of money to build a brand. It takes an incredible amount of capital up front to manufacture the types of products that we manufacture. And we knew that if and we didn't come from a lot of money, we didn't have a lot of money to start with, so we knew that if we didn't raise money, there was a very, very good chance we would never even be able to find out what was possible. And so that sort of drove the initial impetus to fundraise. And then going forward, it's been driven by a very different impetus. Now we're driving growth. So we fundraise so we can grow by 500, 600% a year rather than grow by 20, 30%. And that's been our growth rate for the last few years.
My advice is raise as little as possible relative to what you're trying to accomplish, and your ownership. Because if you raise too much too early, you're mortgaging your future. You won't be able to raise more without becoming a minority owner. So don't do that. I have a friend who is trying to start a company. He's in Ohio, but he's paying his employees with equity early on, right? Which is going to hurt him a lot down the road if he ever wants to go raise some money. Your equity is like scarce, and once you give it up, it's not easy to get it back. So keep it minimal. Figure out what you want to do. Figure out what that's going to cost. Raise like 10% more than that, and don't sell your soul too early.
Yeah, I have a lot to add to that. I think it's important to raise enough to accomplish what your goals. And so if you are short-sighted and think that you can do something with $1 million that everyone else tells you is going to take $4 million, then you need to just go back to the drawing board and not finish that round. You really just need to raise for the time period that you're in, and also realize what that means for your exit. So these companies that raise $3 million out of the gate, or $5 million, or $10 million, their exit has to be so high that they have a lot of proving to do in a really short amount of time. Or if you've bootstrapped for a while, you kind of know some of the cycles of your business, you can be more confident about how much you actually need to spend and how much you need to raise.
And be careful if someone wants to give you too much money too early on.
Okay, I will.
You probably see value. Okay. You shouldn't do that.
I'm curious, you talked about you really shopped around for your investors. I feel like it's the mentality built for most first-time founders, especially going out there, is like it's an honor. I'm begging them, please give me money. But I really think mentality should going in is like, I'm shopping for you, and like everyone's cash is just as green. So let's not pretend like that it's not. So I feel like that's the proper way to go into finding investors. But curious, like, did you approach it that way, the three of you? Like, how did you see people out? Did you say no to a lot of investors?
Well, we hired a banker, so there's a specialty banker that just does our industry. So we hooked up with him. He introduced us to a lot of deals by design, right? We wanted choice, and the no jerks rule. I mean, that was a big part of it. We just wanted to work with people who we liked, and the money was, we would take less money with somebody we would have got along with, right? And we knew that from the beginning. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, we early on we raised money from a lot of angel investors, and only more recently did we raise money from institutional investors. And in those early days, to be honest, we sort of were in a position where we had to take money from where we could get it. I think luckily we were able to get it from some great people, but it wasn't necessarily us dictating who fit and who didn't at all times. Once we did find one, very large, respected investor that we did really get along with and that we did like, then that sort of opened the door for everything else. And I think that sort of speaks to any fundraise, even within a raise. If you find, what's sort of called your anchor investor, they can help you dictate who the rest of those people in that round would be. But early on, that was a challenge for us. That was difficult, and only as we grew and later on were we able to be a little more picky.
I was just going to add that I think there's a kind of this dance that you do with investors, and that is kind of equal parts trying to present that this is the best opportunity that they've ever seen, and you're presenting it to them because you like them, but more importantly that you can't do it without them, kind of stroking their ego at the same time that you're bringing in this confidence in the business. And there's just a fine line between being overly confident and having to beg too hard, and you just have to strike the right balance.
Well, so if an investor wants to put money in your company, then they see value in it, right? You're doing them a favor, not the other way around. Don't lose sight of that.
All right. Little timer says that we're out of time, so I just want to say thank you for coming, and thank you to our panelists.
Thank you.
Enjoy Techweek.